and action that should be undertaken to ensure an inclusive return to school for children with disabilities, as children return to the school after the temporary closure of school due to the COVID-19. UNICEF as Asia and Pacific Region COVID-19 Technical Guidance 2020. Therefore, biopsychosocial model ensure that children with disabilities that always get support of staff and learning aims during face-to-face are not left behind during the pandemic, since these aids are not provided at home. Reference Leonardi 2020, UNICEF as Asia and Pacific Region COVID-19 Technical Guidance 2020. Thank you.
Given the purpose of the study and its research questions, we will use qualitative research as the methodological approach for collecting data. Qualitative research seeks to uncover meaning and to promote the understanding of the experiences of the research clients. The study will be carried out in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia and Malang, Indonesia. A total of 20 participants consists of special education with disabilities will be participating in this study. We take into account several factors such as age, socioeconomic status, status of the schools, public or private, and working or teaching experience. A hybrid interview technique, combination of virtual and face-to-face interview consisting of open-ended questions will be adopted to collect the qualitative data pertinent to this study. However, as for the face-to-face interview, the interview session will be conducted in accordance with the standard operational procedures SOPs and in compliance with social distancing as an effort to curb the spread of COVID-19. The interview session will be conducted within the estimation time, which is for 45 to 60 minutes. They will be conducted according to the participants' preferences, either via online platforms, Zoom, Google Meet, Cisco WebEx, or by meeting face-to-face at preferred time and place. These are some examples of the questions that will be asked to the participants. State the types of support that you know that can be provided to children with disabilities that enable them to have adequate access to education. What kind of support have students with special needs received from the government, NGOs, or parents so far? For special education teachers, how do you play your role as a teacher in providing support to students with special needs in terms of biological, social, or psychological factors for special education teachers? What kind of support have your child received from the government, NGOs, or teachers so far? For parents with children with disabilities, how do you play your role as a parent in providing support to students with special needs in terms of biological, social, or psychological factors for parents with children with disabilities? Prior to the study, we will obtain the ethics approval from the State Education Department and school organisation and written consent from all respondents. Respondents will fill out a confidential socio-demographic questionnaire before the interview. At the start of the interview, the researcher briefly explains the purpose of the study. The interviews will be conducted using Bahasa Melayu and Bahasa Indonesia. It will be easier to use those languages to communicate with the participants during the interviews. The participants are more likely to use the language in daily conversations and giving information. All of the interviews will be conducted by 1 or 2 interviewers who will make audio recordings for each session. All of the audio files will be transcribed verbatim by the interviewer. The transcripts will be sent off to the research clients so that they could check over the transcribed data. The transcripts that will be conducted in Bahasa Melayu or Bahasa Indonesia will be translated to English by the same interviewer, and the translations will be sent to another reader who is also fluent in both language, Bahasa Melayu, Bahasa Indonesia and English language, so as to ensure an accurate translation. All text-based data will be edited and saved as text files to import into NVivo qualitative data management software. All qualitative data was coded and analyzed using the software. A thematic analysis approach will be used to extract meaningful themes from the transcripts. Thematic analysis is a qualitative data analysis method that involves reading through a data set, such as transcripts from in-depth interviews or focus groups. These are the references that we use for this research proposal. That's all from Group 1. Thank you. Hi everyone.
Yay! Thank you so much, Group 1, for the well-prepared presentation with the video. Yeah, so yeah, please, Professor David Evans, you may start giving your feedback, and I would invite all participants, if you have questions or comments, please raise your hand or just type them in the chat box.
So just before I start, Dr. Elga, you just want me to make comment? This is not about questioning.
Oh, you can. You can also
Okay.
questions. Yes, yes. Of course, you can have questions or comments or feedback, anything.
Okay. I'm just jealous that Elga has such wonderful students. Really
actually,
well done.
Actually, they are Dr. Hasrul Hasan's students.
Are they? Oh, I'm very jealous that Gadjah Mada University has such wonderful students. There are wonderful students at the University of Sydney too. One sitting to my left. So I really enjoyed that presentation, and it is so topical and it is so important at this time. So I think in that sense it has a lot to offer. I think you're very bold doing it across 2 countries. So I'm assuming who I know is helping out in Malaysia, but that is a bold initiative, I think, as part of this particular study. I like the way that you've conceptualized it within the biopsychosocial model. I think it gives you a strong grounding and a really nice framework upon which to undertake your interviews and then to hopefully analyze the data. I suppose I have a couple of questions, or a couple of comments, shall I say, and one of them is the title. It talks about support for children with disabilities to gain access to education. Is access really what you're getting at? Access is more of a, can you get in the door type thing. Is it about access, learning and participation? I just sense that there's a little bit more to it than just the notion of access. Access could be an issue. Did students have online facilities if school was being provided online? So there was that sort of thing. I was a little curious why you were offering the face-to-face version of the interviews. Wouldn't it be just as easy to do it all online? It also means all of the data gets collected. I think there's a qualitative difference between face-to-face and online. And I do notice that one of my students from the University of Sydney is on in this meeting, and I should ask her if she has that belief. So that was another question I have. Well, comment. It's something to think about. And the third point goes to the analysis. I noticed you're using thematic analysis. I didn't see any real literature about how that was going to be undertaken and what form of thematic analysis that you were actually going to undertake. There's some really good researchers in New Zealand I'd recommend, and I'm happy to send you chapters of their books around thematic analysis. But you could do some, because there's quite a number of you in the group. I can't quite see how many of you are in the group, but there's quite a number of you in the group. And thematic analysis can include a lot of discussion. You know, they can have the coding and that, but you can also have these really rich discussions between each other as you sort through the information and sort through the data and sort through all of the ideas. I think that would be a really interesting process to conduct. But overall, I'm quite excited to know what the results are now, and I think you've given good consideration to the ethical side of this. From a University of Sydney perspective, I'd be asking how are you storing the data? Where is it being stored? Are you making sure that it remains out of reach of other people, so it's actually secure, so your participants can be assured that what they say does not get released to the wider public? So I'd encourage you to think about that. And my last comment, and this is, I'm curious that you're interviewing special education teachers. There are no mainstream teachers involved in the education of these students. Are they only students who go to special schools? Is that what I'm hearing? Is that correct, Elga? Are they only special?
I would like to hear the response from Group 1 to that question to David. Yeah, so please, Group 1, Imanina, Maudita, and Nurul, if you could provide answer or response to David, that would be great. Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I can have two answer for the two questions from the Dr. David.
Yep.
First, which is the second question that you just give to us just now, which is why we should having a face-to-face interview.
Yep.
We just doing so easily, just use the what's online method. Actually, in Malaysia now, since for me as a teacher, when you are meeting your participants face-to-face, you can know the real environment or the real condition, how the teacher and the special education doing on now.
Yeah.
After the closure of the school, after the heavy wave, we call it heavy wave of COVID-19.
Yep.
How is the lesson going on?
Yeah.
How is what they can share in informal. I mean, they can share like family, like a friend. So others than we only getting the formal instrument or formal report, we also can see from the social side what actually happened down there, what actually others than the fact that we can learn maybe other side or other views from the teachers and the students. For your last question, which is why we are focusing on teachers in special education,
In Malaysia here, we are applying two type of classes, which is we call it inclusive and fully special education class. So in this particular title or topic that we are pick up, I think we are more easy to if you're focused on one classes which is fully special education class, and then which is the mainstream teacher actually is not really involved. They are not even involved in the fully special education class in the even though they are in they call it mixing school, even though our class is also having mainstream student, but when it's coming to the fully special education class, it's just the teachers in that class and the special education student.
Okay.
So we're focusing on that field. Okay, Sister Imanina, maybe you can add another more. Thank you.
Okay, hi, Dr. Elga and also Professor David Evans. I am Imanina. To be honest, this is actually my first research proposal. So I'm quite nervous. I just want to add on the reason why we choose face-to-face method is because some parents and also some teachers are not very familiar and used to with using Zoom, with using Google Meet. That's why we call it as the combination of virtual and face-to-face interview. Yeah. I hope I answer your question.
No, you did, but it still goes to the and Neural, I think, made this comment. It would seem to be a much more natural way if you're face to face. So, are you not potentially getting different sets of data? That was my comment. Yeah, it was just a question. So a comment more. Yeah. And I can understand that you're just focusing on students from segregated classrooms. Yeah. My other comment, because I had read the proposal, it would be really nice to see a very clear purpose statement about the study. And had to go looking for that.
And I think there is one question that hasn't been addressed by group 1. It's about the access.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. What do you mean by access exactly? Yeah, David. Yeah, because when we talk about access, is it only technicality, or is it something more than technicality that maybe involve the issue of quality, maybe, or something, or anything else?
Yeah, and is it about learning? Is it about participation and learning? Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, if you can see our title, what Dr. Elga and Prof. Evans just mentioned now, that's actually what we are point on, which is not just about the technically, not just about whether it's online or face-to-face, but it actually how about the skill of the presenter of the knowledge to the special education itself, to the student, how the knowledge, how the skill to make sure the student get or understand the value of knowledge that we want them to have it. For example, one lesson it's not same when the special education teachers teach them face to face or maybe online, compare the other person that didn't have any skill in the teaching special education student. So the approach, the method of the learning and teaching is very important to make sure the student know, to make sure the student have the quality of knowledge, getting it, they get the lesson. That is actually the main point of the main of the word access in our title. I hope I can answer the question.
There is a question. David, do you have more comments or
No.
questions? Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So, Dewi Kisti and I saw Diana Belaja also raised hand. So maybe Dewi Kisti first.
Hello, can you hear my voice now?
Yes.
I'm trying to answer, but I'm super not confident with my answer. So, yeah. So, hopefully, with this research, we want to observe or gain more individualized treatment plan for each student, because we understand that we cannot only see one factor that would contribute to students successful in learning. So with this research, we want to more develop from the three main factors: the biological, the psychological, and the social model. And we also want to engage the environmental factors, because we in education we face challenging to provide not only access but accommodations with diverse students, including students with disabilities. And we also aware that students need support not only from their family but also from the government and from the school system itself. So I don't know if this is answering the access, the question of the access, but I'm trying to explain about the core of our research. And I would like to say thank you for my group, especially for Sister Fatima and Imanina. They're doing a great job. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
That's a really interesting response, Dewey. I think I've got that right. I think that notion of using your theoretical framework to unpack and define the notion of access is a potentially very strong approach to take, and I really like that response in terms of access being a government responsibility, or being a school responsibility. Yeah, really nice.
Thank you, David. And maybe just one more question, and then we need to move to the next group. Yes, please, Ro.
Hi, sorry, this is not really a question, more of a random comment. Thank you for the brilliant presentation, group one. Good work. So random comment, thank you for clearing up not necessarily the overemphasis on special needs education, special needs teachers, but equal emphasis on segregated education students, teachers, and such. Ms. Elgo had supplied some extremely useful, interesting insight into the overuse of concept of inclusivity in Indonesia, to the point of almost overuse of sensitivity, dynamics, politics, and such. That was especially interesting, as in that's not necessarily the case in other countries. For example, South Africa and other countries, very often inclusivity is a new and encouraged a progressive concept, as in we very often do encourage special needs students to progress to a point of all inclusive mainstream education and access. So outside of Indonesia, it's otherwise known as a progressive and healthy concept. So I do again encourage not the over focus on special needs students or teachers, but the full spectrum of education. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ro. David, do you want to respond to Ro's comment?
I think the comments have great merit, and but I think in this particular project, I think the idea is to define the audience and define the context, and then work from there. But being aware that there are other alternate contexts and ways of looking at inclusivity. But I think keep it packaged small, and describe your context, and then you can go from there. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you so much, David. I myself has just I have one feedback to group 1. So I was wondering if they could involve children with disability themselves in this study, right? So since you want to know whether they have access, access in your term, I think it would be very valuable if you also interview and ask the students with disability themselves. Yeah, because they are I think the expert of their lives. Okay, thank you. Thank you, group 1. Let's give a round of applause for group 1, and let's move to group 2. Sorry, not group 2, group 3. Yes. Group 3, disability perspectives, education and lifetime consequences.
Hello, everyone. We are group 3, and we would like to present our research proposal. Disability perspective, education, and lifetime consequences. These are the members of the group. Nadira Rahmat is an undergraduate student at Sultan Idris Education University in Malaysia. Alexandra Alex Mihai, myself, I'm a high school student specialized in philology from Romania. Iska Nur Andriani is a psychology graduate student at Yogyakarta National University. Vishnu Saputra, a physiotherapist, and he is currently studying at Deakin University in Melbourne. Arastiani Sukma is a student at Gajda Mada University. And Angeline Fresh-Bichesa Halim, who is an undergraduate psychology student at Gajda Mada University. We would like also to mention and thank our student Liza and Hipu, who's been helping us throughout this assignment process. Thank you, Hipu. Now, this presentation consists of introduction, background, research aims, and questions, as well as methodology. Now, the introduction. Education is essential for the capacity development of people with disabilities and for increasing their community participation. Improving the education sector is seen to be necessary as the number of children with disabilities attending school is considerably low compared to children without disabilities. However, UNESCO argues that the information needed to improve the education sector is still lacking. This situation is problematic as education is important to stimulate a more inclusive society, can improve literacy, social and behavioral skills of people with disabilities, increase their self-confidence and potentials, as well as to help them cope with their disabilities. The next slide will be presented by Vishnu. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. So I will be presenting the background for this presentation. So the importance of access to education for people with disability is promoted in several international forums. For example, in the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, it explicitly recognizes the importance of education as the rights of people with disability in the Article 24. The article ensures that people with disability can access education without discrimination to develop their potentials and stimulates social participation. Moreover, it can be argued that Article 7 of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities implicitly state that education is one of the rights of children with disability, where equal access to education must be guaranteed. In the Convention Against Discrimination in Education, although the word disability is not directly stated, This convention guarantees the rights of education for every person, including those who have limitations, to be treated fairly without discrimination. The Convention on the Rights of the Child also promotes access to education for children with disability. Next, please. Although access to education is guaranteed in several international forums, children with disability are still facing barriers to participate in schools, where the economic factor is one of the barriers experienced by children with disability and families. Children with disability from a higher economic status tend to obtain a higher quality of education and the necessary services required to increase their participation in school, while lower economic status will put them at risk of inability to finish school, and they tend to have lower achievement at school. Next slide, please. The geographical location can also influence access to obtain education for children with disability. For example, rural and remote areas tend to have lower capacities in accommodating the needs of children with disability. This low capability to accommodate the needs of children with disability can be seen in the built environment, including school buildings, such as the availability of ramps, railings, accessible walking paths, restrooms, classrooms, accessible toilets, and playgrounds. This situation is relevant to the social model of disability concept, where disability is caused by the disconnection between individuals and their surroundings, resulting in an increase of limitation in their participation in the community. Insufficient support in school has also been seen as the factor that can influence the absenteeism level of children with disability, as school cannot accommodate children's needs. Next slide, please. So society tends to have negative perspectives towards people with disability. These perspectives can be influenced by the medical and religious models of disability. In the medical model, disability is seen as the object of health that needs to be treated, and it often simulates the opinion that people with disability are considered inferior to people without disability. While in the religious model, disability is seen as a result of wrongdoing and taboo. This situation tends to discourage children with disability to participate in the education sector and their families to enroll their children in school. For children with disability who attend school, the situation will be most likely to result in negative treatment from other students without disability, such as bullying and difficulty in making friends. Next slide, please. Understanding children with disability is beneficial to increase their participation in school. However, teachers tend to have insufficient knowledge on how to interact with children with disability to assist their student learning activities. This low capacity to understand children with disability are influenced by the lack of training of teachers regarding disability. The low number of teachers who can accommodate the needs of children with disability in schools is often limited, which consequently affect the inclusivity of schools. The lack of human resources can also affect the development of a curriculum that can increase the engagement of children with disability. School curriculums tend to be designed to measure students' achievement through grades instead of acknowledging the students' heterogeneous needs and how they can fit into the curriculum. This situation has a higher chance to exclude children with disability in the education sector. Next slide, please. So education is beneficial for children with disability, and the rights for education have been assured in the international forums. Unfortunately, such barriers exist and they can influence the participation of children with disability in education sector. In many research, these barriers identified generally represent the external perspectives of children with disability, while it is also essential to include the perspectives of children with disability themselves. Using their perspectives is considerably important to establish a more comprehensive evaluation of barriers in accessing education, and involving their perspectives is also crucial to provide on-target solutions to address these barriers. The next slide will be presented by Alex.
Thank you, Vishnu. Now the research aims. The research aims are to obtain information regarding the lived experience of children with disabilities in accessing education, to determine the barriers of participation of children with disabilities who attend school and those who do not attend school, and to determine the possible lifetime consequences of children with disabilities caused by these barriers. Next slide, please. Now, the research questions are, the first one, what are the barriers experienced by children with disabilities in accessing education? And what are the possible outcomes of the barriers throughout their lifespan? Thank you. The next slide will be presented by Nadira.
Hello and good evening, everyone. So I'm gonna talk about the methodology part, which consists of 6 main points, which is our research design, our participant, how are we going to collect our data, and the procedure, data analysis, and the last one, ethical issues. Next one. So what method do we use for this proposal research? This research is a qualitative research with phenomenology method, because the employment of qualitative method is beneficial to obtain information regarding individuals' experience in social reality. So we choose both qualitative approach and phenomenology method because this research focused on the children with disability experience or personal thought, and the parents who have children with disability in accessing education, so they can provide more in-depth information regarding the perspective of children with disability and the lifetime consequences. So who are our participants in this research? We're gonna select 30 participants who live in special region of Yogyakarta, Indonesia. 50 of them are student and non-student aged 16 to 18 years old, while the other 15 are parents who have children with disability aged 6 to 15 years old. So we choose these numbers of participants to identify necessary elements that require to answer the research question and to provide us more adequate data to integrate the information. Next one. So how are we going to collect the research data? We're gonna use semi-structured interview by asking directly to the informants to dig out and obtain relevant information related to the required data. And we also gonna have our own interview guidelines, and researchers can develop research questions following the information needs desired. Next. So how are we going to conduct the interview session? Like we mentioned before, we'll be conducted the research in special region of Yogyakarta, Indonesia, between April to May 2022 at the participant houses or school. So researchers will obtain participant consent using a written informed consent, and the interview session will be last approximately 20 to 60 minutes per participant in a quiet room. We will also provide necessary services for participants who have difficulties in communication, such as sign language interpreter, and the participant answer will be recorded and converted into word-by-word transcript and encoded script based on the research aspect. Next one. So we're going to analyze the data by using thematic analysis, which is a method of analyzing qualitative data, which can help us to identify the themes, ideas, or topic by examining the research data. We also going to choose deductive approach in the thematic analysis, which is a method for us to identify, analyze, and reporting data with predetermined themes. So we can focus on an in-depth and detailed analysis of every aspect contained in the data, because the qualitative data might be extensive and numerous. So the last part is the ethical issue. We all aware that conducting a research study might arise some ethical issues. So to prevent that, we're gonna use a written consent form, which can help participants to understand better the research outcome and the key elements of a research study while protecting the participant personal information. We also gonna include 5 elements, and the researcher will obtain the signature from the participant. So the 5 elements are a statement that the project is research and participation is voluntarily. Second one, a summary of the research, including purpose, duration, which is the interview session and the research period, and list of the procedure. The third one, reasonable or foreseeable risk or discomfort that might occur during the interview session. The fourth one, reasonable or expected benefits to the research study. And the last one, alternative procedure of course or course of treatment, if any, throughout the research period. Next. So these are all the references that we use in this research proposal. Next. Next. So that's all from group 3. Thank you.
Thank you so much, group 3. Right, please, David.
Okay. I'm sensing that that there is a very strong involve students with disabilities theme in these proposals. So it's really good to see you working with those people who, or those participants who are the most impacted, and they are the students with disabilities. I thought the background and the literature that you have provided certainly had a strong basis. I really liked the way that you used the international conventions and policies to support quite a bit of your discussion. So that was I thought really good. I'm a little unsure on a couple of things, so I'll get right to it. I'm unsure why you are interviewing 15 and I think 16 and 17-year-olds, students with disabilities, and why not younger participants. You're interviewing their parents. I'm a little curious to why that divide. Does anybody have an answer to that?
Yes, maybe one of the member from group 3 could answer to that question, please.
Hi, Professor Evans. My name is Vishnu. I would like to try to answer your question. So we were thinking, like, why interviewing the age group of 16 to 18 directly, and then involving the parents for the younger participants. We were thinking like 16 to 18 years old is the age group of consent, which means that they are mature enough to give answers based on their own perspectives. The second one, we were also thinking like 16 to 18 means they've been through a lot from grade 1, so they've got a lot of perspectives from when they were young. And
Yep.
then we were also thinking about why involving the parents for the younger participants, because we were thinking of the ethical issue and consent. And also they were too young and not quite mature enough to provide I would say, to provide answers from
Yep.
the questions. So yeah, thank you.
Okay. And I think that response would, it would concur with quite a number of researchers. I would, my comeback would be, don't underestimate young children and what they can actually provide you in an interview. I think that young children, if you work the interview and conduct the interview in a way, I think you'll be surprised how much they will give you and how much of it will be very honest and very grounded insight into their experiences. So that would be my one comment about that. The other thing, my concern is you've got interviewing students and interviewing parents, and and I'm not sure how you're going to deal with those two groups of data. They're really apples and oranges. They're two different sets of data. Could you either increase the number of students, 15 students with disabilities, and 50, I'm assuming that's 15 students with disabilities at school and 15 students with disabilities not at school? Is that what that means? The participants consist of 15 students and non-students.
Yeah, so 15 including both students and non-students.
So a non-student is who?
Those who are not attending school, or those who don't have any access to school.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. And which I think is a really, really interesting divide. I can't think of a study of any nature that has looked at that divide. So could you just focus on that group of students and not focus on the younger students would be potentially one way of just tightening the focus, and I think tightening the ability to draw some really good conclusions from your study. That's just a suggestion anyway. But don't underestimate the power of a young child who can give you some very honest answers. My other question was around, you used words like caused, which in a qualitative study, I was a little unsure whether you could draw causal data, causal inferences. So lifelong consequences caused by, how do you draw causal data? How are you going to look at the lifelong side of this? Anybody? Thanks, Ro. I think it's something to think about. I think I'm not sure if I don't think you're actually going to be developing any causal sorts of descriptions. I think you're exploring, and if you choose 16 to 18-year-olds, you're actually exploring it's more like a what's the word, history, life history sort of insight into these students and their experiences in education, which I think would be really, really exciting, especially that divide between students at school and students not at school. I congratulate you on your looking at the ethical issues. I think that's really important. Importance of things like it's voluntary, that you're obtaining written consent, that you're identifying that it's going to be recorded. I'm assuming it's going to be audio-visual recorded. Can I get an answer to that? If you're using signing, you'll need some sort of visual recording as well, I would think.
Yes, we were also thinking about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And can I say, well done, because that was going to be one of my first questions. How are you going to deal with, how are you going to communicate with somebody who may be using another form of communication? So you've really thought that through really well. Well done. And the analysis, again, like I said to the other group, in some ways, I'd like to see a little bit more about what this analysis entails, because it's not easy. But I like that you're using Braun and Clark's work. I think they're really strong in this area. Yeah, I think. But anyway, well done. But I think you can just streamline it a little bit.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. I think so too, that they have a really interesting focus on comparing between student and non-students, the adolescent at the adolescent stage. And I think they are trying to capture cross-sectional research. Yeah. So with this topic of research, I think we have two options: whether they could focus on a certain stage of development, which is adolescent, and comparing student and non-students, or if you want to capture the lifespan or the cross-sectional research, then need to start from younger children and middle childhood and then adolescent. And I completely agree with David that do not underestimate what the young children can say. Yeah, it is us as researchers that need to modify our methods, right, David? To invite the opinion of young children. Yeah, not only by interviewing, but play techniques. What else? Pictures, photo voice, and other things. Yeah. Right. We have two questions. Yeah.
I was going to say, the other thing about working with the adolescents is that they're possibly at an age where you can say to them, where do you think you're going to be in 5 years' time? So you can maybe get them to project into the future. Yeah, it's just a thought.
Yeah. Thank you, David. We have two participants raising their hands, or actually three. I saw three. Right. So I would like to give this opportunity to Iska, and then maybe Jasmine, if we have time, and Ro, could I please put you later? Yeah. So that we can give opportunity for other. Oh, my goodness, we have four. Now I'm
coming at you.
Yeah. So maybe Iska first, and then Jasmine, if we still have time. Sorry if not all of you can speak, but you definitely can ask or comments later for the following groups. Iska?
Yes. Thank you so much, Bu Elga and Prof. David, for the input and suggestion for our group. I need to give more addition about the underestimate for young children that mentioned by Professor David before. Because the context is student and non-student, also we choose the age of participant in 6 to 18, because in Indonesia mostly children is start to school at 6 age. We don't mean to underestimate the younger children, but we just need to be focused on the children in the school age. So thank you so much for all the input and the suggestion for our group.
Thank you, Iska. David?
Yeah, thank you.
David?
I don't have any comments, no.
Okay, right. Thank you. I'm aware of the time. Yeah, we still have 2 groups. And also I'm excited that the committee has prepared a video that showed how we have been through this summer course from the start until the end. So I'm excited for that. And we also have our Dean to give his closing remarks. So I think we need to move to group 4 now. Thank you. Please, group 4.
I'll get started. I actually have to leave early, so that's why I wanted to give our presentation now. Thank you. So I'm going to share my screen and play the video.
Everyone around the globe from all walks of life, including those living in Indonesia, Malaysia, and Australia, have been greatly affected by this pandemic. Students with disabilities face additional challenges that other students do not have to deal with. This is because those with disabilities are more vulnerable during the pandemic, as they may have underlying health conditions that put them at risk if they contract the virus. This research will examine how students with disabilities are supported in returning to school for in-person learning as the world starts to open up and restrictions ease as we prepare to exit this pandemic.
In Australia, the education system recognises 8 areas in which students may need additional support in the classroom: autism, communication needs, hearing loss, vision impairment, learning difficulties, intellectual disability, physical disability and healthcare needs, and extra support. School attendance is not usually an issue in inclusive education for students with disabilities in Australia. The most pressing current issue is the need for further teacher training and professional development in inclusive education. Additionally, specialised support staff make inclusive education more effective. The pandemic has had a greater impact on students with disabilities than those without. Most parents are not trained educators, and many have struggled to manage homeschooling for their children, so students with disabilities need additional support as they return to school. According to research carried out by Children and Young People with Disability Australia, only 22% of students with a disability reported receiving sufficient support for remote learning during the COVID-19 pandemic. Many of the survey respondents reported being forgotten in the shift to remote learning, or being the last group to be considered after arrangements had been made for the rest of the class. More research is needed to find strategies to support students with disabilities as they return to school.
While students with hearing and sight disabilities are having a harder time in attending online classes, the Malaysian Ministry of Education has rolled out a special program for those with learning disabilities, stated in the news article by Razali 2021. With the instability of the economic situation, it is certain that parents are busy finding solutions to maintain their way of life, causing them not to have time to observe their children with learning disabilities during online classes. Even though government is encouraging the enforcement of certain laws and common norms in today's society, the main issues I like to talk about is the attendance in school of students with disability in Malaysia. As we can see, among the initiatives of the Malaysian government in supporting students with disabilities is to open the eyes of the public in changing the perception and stigma of the society towards those with disabilities, and encouraging the intake of the disabled into the workforce and all levels of education institutes.
Based on UUD number 8 of 2018, people with disability have the right to obtain a quality of education in educational unit in all level of education in an inclusive and special way, and also to receive a proper accommodation as a student. But the data show 40% children with disability come from the poorest. In Indonesia, there are 2,212 schools with special education, 180 primary school, 101 junior secondary school, 70 senior secondary school, and 1,861 special school. 28% of youth aged 19 to 21 years old with disability have never enrolled in school. Education is still a privilege to which not every children have access. Because quality education is still offered to such a small sector in the population, a large number of uneducated Indonesians are students with disability. Teachers' knowledge of the condition and diversity of children with disability is said to be lacking. Most of these institutions only use inclusive education as a branding strategy, but in reality have not been able to adequately meet the needs of children with special needs. Unsuccessful implementation of regulation about inclusive education also occurs due to the lack of understanding.
This research will use critical disability theory as the theoretical framework. Critical disability theory questions deeply held beliefs and cultural assumptions about disability and seeks to reinterpret and redefine what it means to live with a disability. It is a progressive philosophy and subset of critical theory which provides a basis for academics, practitioners, and activists alike to push for social change. The aim is to end stigma and discrimination of people with disabilities, to achieve equality through changing social mindsets and cultures around the world, which have traditionally oppressed people with disabilities. Critical disability theory recognizes people with disabilities as experts in their own lives.
Next part, methodology. Step 1, literature review. We have conducted a preliminary literature review on inclusive education in Indonesia, Malaysia, and also Australia, and collect newspaper articles about the situation for students with disabilities doing homeschooling or online learning during pandemic. We intend to conduct an in-depth literature review before connecting the field work. Step 2, develop interview questions. Step 3, apply for ethics approval to conduct the research. Step 4, find interview participants. We will select interview participants using cluster sampling in order to obtain a representative sample. We will identify inclusive schools and contact the principal to ask for permission to conduct interviews, then obtain informed consent from the participants, including teachers, parents, and students. Step 5, conduct semi-structured interviews by phone and record them using a voice memo app. Step 6, collect and analyze the data. We will transcribe the phone interviews and code them using NVivo software. Finally, we will analyze the data to identify trends. Step 7, develop policy recommendations for government and suggest support strategies for teachers, parents, and students as they return to school. Here are some of the research questions that we have compiled. First, for students, what can we do to help you be more comfortable with the school situations? And what are the biggest challenges you face? For parents, what preparation is needed to ensure a smooth learning experience for your child? And what challenges do you expect to face as schools start to open again? And for teacher, what mental preparation do you think is necessary in adapting back to in-person classes? And what can the government do to support you and your students to ensure that children with disabilities are given the same rights in education as others?
For the anticipated ethical issue, we have concluded that some participants may become distressed during the interview process as they discuss the stressful event they have faced during the pandemic. We will protect the participant privacy and confidentiality. If we we discover that a person requires assistance, we will send them to a local non-profit or disability service provider. So that's all from us. Thank you.
Thank you, Group 4. Yeah. Please, David, you may start.
I can start. Okay. It's an interesting study in many ways, because you're comparing three very different three very different contexts, and I think that's going to pose its own dilemmas for you. I have to ask, what is an inclusive school?
Do you want me to answer that one now?
Okay.
Okay,
I'm happy for anyone to answer it.
Yeah.
And yet the critical disability theorists would argue that it could easily be an exclusionary practice, in the sense that just placing a student there is not necessarily inclusive. I'm quoting Roger Slee there. So yeah, I think you need to be very careful about what you call an inclusive school, because in the Australian context, technically every school is an inclusive school, because by law you have to enrol students. It's against the law not to enrol a student. So whereas I know in Indonesia, well, you technically don't have inclusive schools anymore, because you had that demarcation between inclusive and not inclusive schools. And sorry, Malaysia, I don't know the Malaysian context well enough to make that thing. I think you need to be very wary of how you define, or what you call an inclusive school.
Yeah, David, just sorry, I interrupted. This is what Ro has raised in the beginning, about inclusivity. We had this discussion yesterday as well, because yesterday one of the group also used that discourse of inclusive school, and maybe that is very Indonesian and Malaysian context, which I know in Australian it's you don't use that term as far as I know. Yeah, and so be careful when choosing discourse, and also see whether the theory that we use is really what is it, upholding, or on the contrary, it's really something that very different. Sorry, David, please go ahead.
No, that's fine. I like the notion that you've got a strong theoretical position, the critical disability theory. You haven't thought about using critical disability theory in education? It's just a slightly different. Just a slightly different twist on the disability, the critical theory side of things. There's a recent article by Roger Slee and Marnie Best and Tim Corcoran, I think it is, which it's really an opening discussion about that concept. But I think it would support very much what you're trying to do. And in fact, I should have a better look at the questions, the research questions that you posed. Yeah, because the ones that are the research questions that the interview questions that I saw on the overhead seem to be a little pitched at what are the problems, and I'm quickly looking at your PDF copy of the questions here, and I think you've got some what was some benefits, what was some successes. I do think you need to look at the positive sides of this. There might have been things that families really loved, and or that students really liked, or whatever. So I encourage you to think about that. Support strategies were one of the things that you were going to come up with. You answered that to some extent, that you were going to ask the participants what they thought what you expected them would help them to return. I don't know whether you've got any preconceived ideas about that. Do you think you know what might be some support strategies?
No, no, we're really waiting to hear what the respondents and participants tell us about that.
Yeah, which is good. I'm a great comment, because I think letting the participants voice that, I think is going to be really good, because you're not using a grounded theory approach, though, are you? Because you're doing a literature review. I'm just, yeah, it just lends itself to a nice piece of grounded theory work, that's all. Yeah, I come back to my original comment. I think your biggest tension is how you juxtapose those three contexts. It's also a strength. And I look forward to the results, Jasmine. I look forward to seeing your name in lights and your team in lights. Okay.
Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, David. We hope that somehow those research ideas really could be put into practice, David. So at this stage, it's research ideas, but who knows that, our engagement and connection among the speakers from all over the world, and also the participants, one day would, really realize, yeah. We have one question here from Lani. Yeah, and then after Lani, we will move to...
Got another one there.
Oh, another one. Yeah. Okay, Lani, please.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I don't use my camera because I'm in Papua, and the signal sometimes is not stable.
Thank you so much for joining from Papua.
Yes, this is interesting for me because, well, I'm a school teacher in elementary, and I believe without a label as an inclusive school, my school is inclusive for so many reasons. And I see the research here probably from yesterday. They tend to look from the students and parents and teacher side, but then when talking about school, probably, well, this is my humble opinion, probably we need to ask the school also, because the readiness of school is not just from teachers or parents or the children, the students, but the school also have some challenges, have some maybe they have potential, or they have well, challenges to what can I say, to facilitate the how we provide education for this inclusive student, for the disabled student. Thank you. Just a little thought from me.
Thank you, Lani. And maybe we could also invite Jacqueline to express a quick questions, so David can, and also the group can address or respond to those both directly. Jacqueline?
Yeah, hello. I'm sorry that maybe my question is a little bit simple, and I think I want to ask if anyone have a solution for disability people, especially children, that they can get a proper education, especially in Indonesia, because I don't see a lot of the school for disability children. Because maybe some people think, some schools think that disability children interfere the learning process of a class. So I'm asking if anyone have a solution, and what about a family with a disability kids with economic limitation? That's is just my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Jefflin. Maybe Jasmine and her team could answer to that first, and then David could add to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Jasmine and yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think it's not a simple question. Like, it's a simple question to ask, but it's not a simple question to answer. It's really difficult. So you raised some very important points about the cost of education, the difficulty in being inclusive, and many other things. So these are important factors that, you know, with the stigma and marginalization of people with disabilities, when all students are included in the same classroom, then you might get some negative reactions. So it's really about managing that and supporting everybody just to come together. But yeah, it's not a simple question. So I'm sorry, I can't answer it better than that.
I agree with Jasmine's. I agree with Jasmine's response. It's an easy question to ask, but it's a very, very difficult one to A, answer, and B, address. But I'd like to link it into Lani's comment about that breaking down stigma and breaking down marginalization and those sorts of things is really part of a school executive, a school leadership team. That's part of building strong schools that celebrate diversity, that welcome every student who comes in the gate and wants to be a learner, and promotes that really positive learning environment. Skilling their teachers, working with their parents to break down any perceptions of stigma and bias. It's a whole of community effort, but I do think that Lani's comment about maybe talking with school leadership would be an interesting addition, because I think that's another story that it can make or break the success of a return.
Yeah. Thank you so much, David, for your response. Right, that was very interesting discussion, yeah, and we can go on and on with that topic. Yes. Very, very interesting, but we need to move to our last group now, which is group 8. Please, group 8.
Hello, everyone.
Yes.
Hello, can you hear my voice?
Yes, Iftia, yes. We can.
Okay, I will share my screen. Can you hear the video? The sound of the video?
Yes,
Mbak.
Welcome and hello everyone. We are glad that you can join us today. We are from Group 8 and we would like to present to you our student-led conference group research discussion on the topic of acceptance and perception of mainstream teachers and students towards students with disabilities in an inclusion classroom in Indonesia and Malaysia. If you have any questions regarding our topic, you may ask at the end of the presentation. Thank you, and now let's get started. Here are the contents that we will discuss today. The Part 1, Introduction. The concept of inclusion education. Based on Paraskevi G 2021, the inclusion of special educational needs students in mainstream schools is a global trend. This has been the subject of ongoing research and discussion in recent decades. Inclusion as a concept is a philosophy that urges schools, neighborhoods, and communities to welcome and value everyone, regardless of differences. The center to the philosophy of inclusion are the beliefs that everyone belongs to somewhere. Diversity is valued and we can all learn from each other. Regarding our discussion, we are looking forward to inclusive education from the perspective of the two countries of Asia, which are Indonesia and Malaysia, since all of us come from these two countries. According to Indonesia's regulation, Permendiknas number 70, the year 2009, at least one inclusive school at the elementary and junior high school levels has to be implemented in each district and high school level for the province. Meanwhile, in Malaysia, the inclusive education program aims to integrate special needs children into mainstream classes with support of teaching aids and additional assistance. It was targeted to create a more inclusive learning environment by not segregating children with different needs from other students. Hence, we can see the inclusion is concerned with the identification and removal of different forms of barriers. Why did we choose this topic though? Well, we chose it as we noticed that in recent years, the acceptance of disabled students in the inclusive classroom is a challenge that must be accepted by mainstream teachers and students. In addition to receiving the challenge from the school, typical students' acceptance is also an aspect that needs to be addressed. Therefore, this issue influences their acceptance and perception of the implementation of inclusive education. The Part 2, Background. For the research background, based on UNESCO 1994, inclusive education originally defined by the Salamanca Statement, which refers to schooling in which all children, including children with severe disabilities, have access to regular classrooms with the existence of adequate support. Moreover, attitudes are one of the important concepts in social psychology that refer to the association between an attitude object and an evaluative category as good versus bad or like versus dislike. Albertine and Friends 2011. In the context of inclusive education, attitudes refer to how teachers and students think, feel, and behave towards inclusion, classrooms, and special educational needs students. Readiness to accept special educational needs students in a mainstream classroom requires mainstream teachers and students to have a positive attitude and sufficient knowledge about special educational needs students, besides the facility provided by the institutions. These are some of the past research that we have reviewed and taken from the year of 2011, 2019, and 2020. Based on the study that has made by Forlin, ETAL, Farmer, ETAL, and Salvodita, we can conclude all of the researchers is that acceptance of disabled students in the inclusive classroom is a challenge that must be accepted by mainstream teachers and students due to many forms of barriers in inclusion. Hence, we are using the SACIR scale as it is believed that scaling early towards pre-service and identify their perspectives as a piece of useful information to create a framework in order to change their perceptions about the sentiments, attitudes, and concerns among the inclusive students. Based on Murdaka ETAL 2018, using this tool can help the teachers to be fully heedful in their social justice and critical pedagogy, since most of them are still unmindful in the acceptance and perception of inclusion in the aspects of sentiments and concerns. So, the research questions and issues that we would like to discuss in our research when we are doing the proposal were: how much is the percentage of the acceptance of mainstream teachers and students towards disabilities students in the inclusion classroom? And what is the perception of the mainstream teachers and students towards the presence of disabilities students in the inclusion classroom?
The research will be recruited using certified sampling methods. The sample will consist of a total of 200 participants, which will be divided into two groups of 100 Malaysian and 100 Indonesians. For each group, there will be 50 students and 50 teachers. The inclusion criteria for the teachers that will be used in this research are high school mainstream teachers of any random subjects. As for the students, we will use high school students aged from 15 to 18 years old. Both teachers and students must not have any types of disability or illness that would prevent them from completing the questionnaire and willingly to participate in the study. The instrument that will be used in this research is the Sentiments, Attitudes, and Concern about Inclusive Education Revised Version Scale by Forlin et al. In 2011 with suitable adaptation. The scale will assess three dimensions of inclusive education, which are sentiments, attitudes, and concern. The scale consists of 24 items that divided into two parts: the demographic and the question regarding the perception of participants toward inclusive education. These scales use 4 level Likert items from 1 to 4. 1 stands for strongly disagree, 2 stands for disagree, 3 stands for agree, and 4 stands for strongly agree. Indonesia and Malaysia. After determining which school will be taken as the population sample, the researcher will randomly select 5 teachers and 5 students from each of the schools to be recruited as the respondents for the study. The researcher will later distribute the survey and conduct a face-to-face interview with the participants. After the data is collected, the quantitative data will be analyzed using SPSS software, while the qualitative data will be analyzed using the open coding method. Analysis of qualitative content will be guided by which provides a systematic procedure for identifying categories and their relationships. We will follow the coding process suggested by Creswell and also by Strauss and Corbin by using open coding, axial coding, and selective coding. As for quantitative data, will be analyzed by using descriptive statistics, t-tests, f-tests, and Pearson product moment correlation. A stepwise regression analysis will be conducted to explain acceptance toward inclusions with mainstream teachers and mainstream student-related factors used as independent variables. We realized that there are some limitations in our research proposal. Since we use the self-report scale methods, there will be a response bias, measurement bias, and socially desirable responses by the participants. We may also have a lack of demographic details as a shortcoming for elaborate analysis of data. These are some references that we use in our proposal presentations. Okay, everyone, that's the end of our research proposal presentations. We are sincerely appreciate your attention today, and now we would be interested to hear your thought and your question about our research proposal. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. That's all from Group A.
Thank you, Group 8. Please,
Thank you,
David.
Group 8. Yeah. I'm going to have to work out where you get some of these PowerPoint templates from. So well done. This is probably a study that, as Elga will know, is probably a little bit more down my alley. So I found the literature. It was only a brief literature review, but I found that interesting. You link the concept of inclusion, inclusive education to the Salamanca statement. I would read further now and look at documents like the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Look at general comment number 4, which is again. It's really an evaluation, I suppose, of the convention 10 years afterwards. And last year they released the All Means All General Education Monitoring Report, which again I think will provide you with some really rich links in regards to inclusive education. So I encourage you to do that. Okay, terms. Your terminology. Hang on a minute, let me go back.
Inclusion classroom.
Acceptance and perception. All right, and your acceptance and perception And your instrument, though, looks at sentiments, attitudes, and concerns. I'm just a little curious about the wording you're using. What do you mean by a perception? Is it the same as attitudes? If so, why not call it attitudes? I heard at one point you were using the word perspectives. I think it would be really good to get the language sorted out. What are you actually talking about? Because you define attitudes very carefully in using a really good reference, really strong. Is that what you're talking about? Attitudes? Yeah, I'd encourage you to just maybe get some of the terminology, because I think people are going to ask you questions about, well, what do you mean by a perspective? What is a perception? When you really mean attitudes. So you're using the is it the SACI? The SACI, is that how you pronounce it? It has four main constructs. Well done. Now this is a question I would like an answer to. It's a 4-point scale. Do you perceive any difficulties with a 4-point scale? I suppose, to put it another way, why not use a 5-point scale, which gives a midpoint, which gives a neutral? What you're actually forcing people into making a judgment. I'm just curious, whether you've thought about that and what the logic is behind not using a midpoint.
May I answer this question?
Yes.
I think we don't have the midpoint answer because we don't want our participants to use neutral as their answer. Okay. Neutral responses.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
When 5 like don't know what to answer, they tend to answer in the midpoint or neutral. So we use 4-point Likert scale.
Is that what was used in the original instrument?
That's the original instrument also used for Likert scale.
Okay. All right. Okay. I'm just interested. Yeah.
And thank you for the question, Professor David, and for your former question about the terminology about attitudes, perception, and perceptive in our proposal. And in one of our literature review, I found that the perception of student and teachers actually make them have a different attitude towards students with disability. So the perception can make can have an impact on the attitude of mainstream students and mainstream teachers towards students with disability. Yeah. That's why we use the term of perception and also attitudes. Does that answer your question? Maybe my other
no, probably not. So how are you measuring perceptions? Yeah.
For the perception we are using in our research instrument, they are also measuring the perception, I think. In the qualitative, we use a mixed method, quantitative and qualitative. And we use for the perception, we use qualitative methods. We use interview to measuring the perception to know how the perception of mainstream as students and teachers towards the student with
Okay.
disability.
All right, I'm a little puzzled how you're collecting the qualitative component though. How are you collecting the qualitative? I don't see. Question: how are you collecting qualitative data?
We are using a semi-structured interview about the perception of
Okay.
mainstream student and mainstream teachers.
Okay, yeah, the proposal you've got doesn't, it gets, that one got past me, that you were having semi-structured interviews.
I'm sorry, we didn't include the example of
Okay.
qualitative interview question in our proposal.
Okay, I will be interested to see how you define perspectives or perceptions, right? What's the do you know what the technical adequacy of the measure is? Of the instrument, the quantitative instrument, the survey? Do you know what the technical adequacy? What's the alpha, the Cronbach alpha?
No. Maybe my my other groups, we didn't include the psychometric instrument of CCR instrument in our proposal. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, that's all right. Something tells me it doesn't have a very good technical adequacy. That's just a hunch. The other thing, the wording in that survey, some of it is a bit it's 10 years old. Like, I dread the thought that I could eventually end up with a disability. It's not a very friendly question. It might be. I'd encourage you to maybe to have a look at some of the wording. I think you could be far more inclusive. That's all. Okay, it's going to be an interesting study. The other thing that I'm not quite understanding is how you're going to use the mixed methods component, and I think you need to be clear on what that's going to mean, because it's one thing to collect survey data, one thing to collect interview data, but then the big issue is how do you bring that data together to answer your questions. Yeah. Okay. Well done. Well done, Group 8.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Group 8. Right, so that means we have finished with all group presentations, and I would like to appreciate feedback from Professor David Evans. I think you have given us, the holistic perspective, macro and macro and micro perspectives, from theory to methodology of the research, everything. I hope those students can sleep peacefully tonight. Thank you so much, David. Right.
Pleasure.
So thank you. So I will give the screen and time back to our Master of Ceremony, Zahra. And I'm aware that our Dean has entered the room. So maybe we could proceed to watching the videos of the summer course, and then closing remarks from the Dean. Please, Zahra.
So thank you everyone for the wonderful presentations, and also thank you for those who have given feedback. So now we're going to watch the video of the testimonies about the summer course.
Alexandra, and I really love to be a part of the summer course in disability and lifespan development. The facilitators are great. I learned a lot of new knowledge. Keep it up.
Hi everyone, I'm Dayan Sundon from Sultan Idris Education University. It has been a wonderful journey and an eye-opening to participate in this summer course. Thank you.
CLSD summer course is really insightful and give me a lot of new perspective about disability around the world. Thank you for all the facilitators.
This summer program is a great experience for me, which is I get a lot of insightful knowledge. It is very inspiring as well as giving awareness to me. I am very grateful and thankful to be one of the participants in this program.
Hi everyone. I found this summer course is a very strong professional and personal development because there's so much learning, not only from the speakers, but also from the participants and student community. So I greatly appreciate everyone's contribution into this event, and I look forward to seeing you all next year. Bye for now.
Nothing's gonna change my love for you. You ought to know by now how much I love you. One thing you can be sure of, I'll never ask for more than your love. Nothing's gonna change my love for you. You ought to know by now how much I love you. The one that changed my whole life through, but now.
That was a wonderful video. Now, before we end the summer course, we would like to invite the Dean of the Faculty of Psychology, Gadjah Mada University, which is Dr. Rahmat Hidayat, Doctor of Philosophy, to share a closing statement for this summer course.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Can you hear me? Is my voice loud and clear enough?
Yes, Pak Rahmat.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So, thank you very much, Belka and the Master Ceremony for giving me time. First of all, is to introduce myself as the new Dean of the Faculty of Psychology, very new actually. I've been in office not 1 week complete yet. So it's still a stage for me, a time for me to adjust to the new role as the Dean. And it's a big honor for me at this process to welcome you all, and especially to welcome Professor Evans here. And unfortunately, this is on the final part of this wonderful summer course. But nevertheless, this is such a precious time for me to be given this opportunity to say, first of all, my deepest appreciations to all and everyone that has been involved in this wonderful summer course. Watching the reflections of the participants, I sense that this has been such an inspiring workshop, inspiring course for everyone. And participation over the, if I was not mistaken, 20 lectures, 20 different topics, I suppose, encompassing different perspectives and from international context. I can only imagine how such an interesting journey for you to go through all the topics and to meet all the lectures. I cannot mention all different places the lectures from, and I'm also impressed by participants coming, if I was not wrong, from how many countries, Belka?
participants, I think around 18, if I'm not mistaken.
From 80 different countries.
18.
Such wonderful things. Can you mention some of it?
I need to check back to the data. Sorry.
Even when I cannot mention all the where the author participant coming from, can I also test you from how many countries the lectures from?
Right. I need to check the data. Please one sec, Pak Rahmat.
No, I mean, I only ask this to express my appreciations to your big effort in organizing this conference. I think from these different aspects of this summer course, I can see some strength that has been part of this course, multidisciplinary, I suppose, from psychology, developmental psychology, within the psychological perspective, clinical psychology, I suppose, probably from sociological, and I suppose public policy as well. That certainly is relevant to the topic of disability or disability that has been discussed throughout this summer course. So this, for the Faculty of Psychology, I think is a very important and part of creating learning environment and discussing topics which is important to our society, and using the spirit which is very important for us to learn and to be aware of this important principle, such as the involvement of all people, the involvement of all the what I might not use the correct words, disadvantaged people in understanding the situation and in creating policy. I suppose the end part, one part of the objective can be by involvement of all these stakeholders. So therefore, I would like to express my appreciation on behalf of the faculty. First of all, is to all the lecturers at the last sessions, Professor David Evans, thank you very much. We wish that in the future, your support and maybe your presence at the Faculty of Psychology when the situations allows us to invite you is highly expected. And also, of course, we would like to express our appreciation to all the participants who've been such motivated participants who I believe has been sharing their own perspective, their own experiences, so that it makes the course even richer in terms of exploring all different issues and perspectives. And of course, I suppose this course is supported financially by the Office of International OIA, Office of International Affairs. Sorry, this is many part of the university things. I still get used to it. Well, what I know that this program has been, I've been the director for the similar summer course back then, 2017 or 2018, I think, with the Center for Public Mental Health, with issues of mental health system. So I guess this is the same scheme of funding then. So this shows us that the Office of International Affairs of Universitas Gadjah Mada has been consistently supporting us in developing important and valuable programs in terms of creating academic atmospheres, in terms of academic programs for both our students, our lecturers, as well as more importantly, in terms of creating academic exchange between different universities in Indonesia as well as globally. So our appreciations to Office of International Affairs, UGM, and of course, the organizers, Center for Lifespan Development, led by, I call her Mbak Elka, of course, Mbak Elka, Mbak Ditya, and all members present in here. I don't know whether Mbak Ampuni is in here or not, and all the team, including the student assistant, who has been working so hard over such a long, how many months was it to organize this course? We can only express our appreciation to all of your commitment and your all hard works. And then we know that there is a unit at the Gajah Mada University, unit Peduli Difabel, Gajah Mada University, which has been, I think, very supportive. I remember 5 years or so when I was vice dean of this faculty. Part of our commitment at that time was to create a disability-friendly environment. In that time was quite sometimes been neglected. For example, when we built a building, we did not take care of the needs of our students who who have problem in mobility, for example. I remember then that that time this unit was one of the advocate for the faculty, for the university to create disability-friendly environment within our campus. So I have no doubt of their support to this summer course of this course, and therefore on behalf of the faculty, I would like also to express our appreciation to UKM Peduli Difabel, especially Dr. Wuri Handayani. And this is such an excellent summer course. The first time, I think, CLSD organized this summer course. So it's our big expectation and our support to CLSD for next year to also do a similar program. I heard that the program would be focused on human development, of course. That's the focus of the center's research and activities. But from the perspective of indigenous worldview, knowledge, and research, and so on, I think maybe announce this program. So I hope and I believe and I'm sure the next year will be similarly successful, inspiring programs to be expected for next year. So again, our appreciation to all the participants, and with that, I suppose I can close my what is it? I don't like to say my speech, but I don't know whether this can be considered as closing to this event. Maybe it's not easy to close this thing. So I just give it back to maybe Bailka to say something to close this.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Bapak Rahmat Hidayat. Greatly appreciated that you give your closing remarks to all of us. yes, we are looking forward to our next summer course next year, and we do hope full support from the faculty to this event, so that our summer course would get better and better. And yeah, this is our very first time, and there are room for improvements. I believe we will get bigger and better next time with our new topic. Yeah, well, Ro, maybe it's not a spoiler, but we are looking forward to have a more discussion on topic of indigenous worldview and lifespan development. Yeah, thank you so much. I give back to MC. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Rahmat and Dr. Elga, for the great closing statements. As we have completed the student-led conference, which is the last event of the summer course, the summer course has come to an end. We would like to give our utmost gratitude to the participants for taking part in the summer course. Thank you for joining us in this journey. It has been a wonderful time being alongside the participants. We would also like to give our deepest apologies for our mistakes and any inconveniences that you have faced throughout the summer course. With that being said, you may report these matters to your student liaison. Before we end the meeting, I would like to ask the participants to show your reactions for the overall summer course. I see applauses, I also see hearts, I also see confetti, a wonderful variety of reactions. Okay, thank you everyone for the reactions. I hope that we can